Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host TJ Mabardi. Today we are going to be starting to get into some of the Super Bowl talks between the 49ers and the Chiefs now that that is set. So we're going to start off by talking about some of the biggest storylines surrounding the game going into it, at least as of 2 weeks out. We're then going to take that conversation and sort of develop it into more of a Chiefs-centric segment where we talk about what another Super Bowl championship would do for Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and this Chiefs organization. Then we are going to put some final thoughts on the Lions and the Ravens. I know that don't want to harp on them too long necessarily, but it's going to be a couple weeks before we actually get this final Super Bowl matchup. And these two franchises between Detroit and Baltimore are obviously very prideful and put together incredible seasons. And we're just going to sort of wrap up thoughts on them before finally getting to the NBA. And it was an absolutely bonkers night last night across the association. Lots of games and lots of very close games at that. So it was a lot of fun. Before we get into the show today, just a reminder to like and follow. And if any of you have live questions, remember to use the link that is streaming across the bottom ticker throughout the show to help get your questions the priority they deserve and to make this as interactive of a show as possible. Without further ado, getting into our first segment here, talking about the biggest headlines from the upcoming Super Bowl 58. So this obviously is a rematch of the Super Bowl just a handful of years ago during the 2019 and 20 season where these two teams matched up in the Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes won his first Super Bowl to start of kickoff his run here. Of course, had an MVP by then, had a classic playoff game against Tom Brady, the GOAT, the one that Mahomes, I mean, the reality is he's already chasing Brady in some ways. And again, I'm not trying to get too much into that now because we will be getting to that in the second segment. But a very important Super Bowl, really, for both of these franchises. I think that sort of to start off this conversation, talking about the 49ers here, I mean, in that 2020 Super Bowl, it was a lot of these same young players. There was George Kittle, there was Nick Bosa, there are those almost iconic clips of them after the game crying, George Kittle promising that he was going to come back with vengeance and make it back to this spot, and he did, and he has an opportunity along with that 49ers team to take down the team that knocked them out of it just those handful of years ago in the Chiefs. I think that even though obviously this Chiefs or this 49ers roster feels like they have a lot to prove, I think that the number one person that would benefit from a win here is head coach Kyle Shanahan. We have sort of touched on it in the coming weeks about just how important a Super Bowl win would mean for him and his legacy after, despite being extremely accomplished up to this point, still having some sort of negative connotation and reputations surrounding him as far as being able to win in the big spots. And here he is again. I think that he has to be, at least of my time coming up as a football fan, but really probably of all time, one of the most accomplished guys to not win a Super Bowl as far as coaching goes, dating back to the really good season that he put together with Atlanta as their offensive coordinator in 2016 and 17, helping to put together this unbelievable offensive season for the team as a whole, and Matt Ryan specifically helping him to win an MVP award, the one of his career, reaching the Super Bowl, building up this massive lead, and then ultimately falling short in the 28-3 collapse, which is sort of where it all started to stem from, not running the ball enough, being too pass happy. There was, of course, the strip sack that came in a costly moment for them in that second half that sort of helped ignite the comeback. He's now reached 4 of the past NFC Championship games as the 49ers head coach, and he reached the Super Bowl in 2020, like we talked about. And then after building up the 20-10 lead, they fall short, allow 21 consecutive points, can't get it done on offense, and obviously a lot of that game came with the missed throw by Jimmy Garoppolo on their final drive, overthrowing his receiver on a crucial down, which sort of leads us into this second storyline of Brock Purdy and how he sort of fits into this role. You're going to be hearing all about the Mr. Irrelevant. It really surrounded him for the majority of the playoff push last season, but at this point, we just accepted him for who he was, and the draft status, it was thrown out there every once in a while, and most of the time when it was more so about kind of the group of people that were trying to bring him down, I would say. And he has exceeded expectations, obviously, and he's brought his team to this big moment. And I think that now we're going to get maybe another taste about Brock Purdy being the last pick in his draft class a couple years ago. So be prepared for that. I think that it is very interesting. Yesterday on this show, we had a 49ers fan in the chat talking about how much of an upgrade and how the Chiefs should be scared because instead of Jimmy Garoppolo being at quarterback, it is Brock Purdy. Now, I do definitely think that Purdy is better, but I think that the question is just how much better is sort of what's surrounding this. Now, obviously, he and Kyle Shanahan and this 49ers team has been a little uncharacteristic of sorts in coming back after some slow starts the past couple weeks, which is huge. We obviously saw across the bracket in the AFC what happens when you have a team that doesn't have that experience coming back from a deficit. So this is good, but it is going to be huge, I think, for the 49ers in this game not to get out to a slow start, because I think that this Chiefs defense is too good, and to come back on like that to allow big plays and allow the script to flip a little bit. And then on the other side, I think that the Chiefs offense is too good to allow the 49ers the opportunities such as fumbling on your own 25-yard line and giving you that short field position. I think that the 49ers are going to have to come out hot and starting right, and this is something between Brock Purdy and between Kyle Shanahan and his play calling of being able to answer the moment. I thought that Shanahan was really impressive coming out in that second half after struggling as much as they did in the first half, getting back to their script, using Deebo Samuel, who has been their number one weapon, has been such a massive part of their offense all season, and he was obviously maybe a little limited in practice throughout the week, but at that point, the moment called for, we need to use our best weapon, and he did so. So I think that first quarter, first half is going to be just about as crucial as any minutes in the entire game for the 49ers here. Another storyline that I think is going to obviously in the sports world and in the entertainment world and just the news in general, love it or hate it, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift is a very significant story as far as the culture-wise. Now, I know that the majority of football fans obviously don't want to hear anything more about it, so I'll try and be brief here, obviously, but there was a very interesting report that just came out from the front office sports where they said they went through data and found that since Taylor Swift first came to a Chiefs game, the NFL has made an extra $331 million in revenue. It sounds a little extreme. Obviously, the Kelce jersey sales and memorabilia, stuff like that, has to contribute some to that. The ticket prices for any games that Taylor Swift was there for definitely was more expensive. I don't know about $331 million, and again, it was front office sports that did this. They used data from Apex Marketing Group. I haven't actually went through the study because I myself don't really care enough to dive into Taylor Swift any more than we are sort of shown it as a football community at this point. I don't get too upset with it at this point. It's just whatever, but you do have to acknowledge that it has very much increased and helped the NFL based off of female viewership and some of those jersey and memorabilia sales as well. You already have Swiftie fans tracking the flights because I think that she has a concert the day before or something like that. So if you haven't heard enough about Taylor Swift up to this point, just buckle yourself in because I don't think that we're done with it by any means now that she's going to be here. And the latter half of these storylines, I'll just sort of briefly touch on it now because we are going to shortly be hitting a break and getting more in depth about it. But it comes down to all of this talk about the Chiefs, Mahomes, Andy Reid, and whether or not this can be considered a Chiefs dynasty. Quickly, I will give my thoughts in the fact that I think across all sports, typically the number is 3 as far as championships you have to reach to officially be considered a dynasty. I consider the Warriors a dynasty. Patriots are a dynasty in the 2000s. In the 2000s, really, it's up to you whether you want to consider the Patriots dynasty as a full-blown thing or if it was a first dynasty early in the 2000s and another one in the 2010s. But obviously now they are reaching their 4th Super Bowl in 5 years, 6 years. 6 years is how long Mahomes has been the starting quarterback, but obviously didn't reach in 2018. So I guess that would make it 4 in 5 years, which is a tremendous mark of its own. And obviously if this sort of dominance keeps up and they weren't to win a Super Bowl but keep reaching it, I think that you can maybe be a little more lenient on that third championship rule that I have. But obviously if they win the Super Bowl this year, I think it's solidified. I don't think that there's really much of an argument that this should officially be classified as a dynasty. Now, what that means for the organization and for their players involved, we will get more to on the other side of this break. So be sure to stick with us and we will get into all of that.